In today's episode, we'll talk about women's self-esteem. Okay, so welcome everybody to the event Women on Redefining Humility so that we can shine without shame. This is a fireside chat with 4 women, inviting you to join us in redefining humility so we can shine in the world without shame. And with me is Maria Mar, and I'll first introduce her and then I'll introduce our other 2 awesome guests. Now, Maria Mar is the dream alchemist and the midwife for the concept of peacock humility. She's an author, storyteller, and shaman. She engages the transformational potency of story and art to empower spiritual, creative women in breaking free from their story of limitations so that they fully embody their purpose, share their gifts, and live their brilliance now, just as they are. And I'll hand it over to Maria. Can you explain the concept of peacock humility to us and how all this came to be?
Okay. All right. Well, imagine that I'm going to give you a scenario, a very common scenario, that you probably recognize the woman and maybe you were the woman at one point. All right. That this woman comes in to make a presentation. And she says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh my God, because the train was stuck. And, I'm so sorry for being late." And then she starts putting all the things together, her PowerPoint. "Oh, I'm so sorry because I couldn't set it up before. Oh, just give me a mirror. I am really sorry." And then she starts doing the presentation. And she says, "Oh, I'm sorry because I have to write this, but I have terrible." Do you get where it's going? That's humbug humility. And where I recognized it because I started to feel that humility, I started to hate humility, basically. I got so pissed off with humility. And then I said, no, humility, if we don't have humility, we don't bow to the divine. And we think that we're better than other people. So we need humility, but I don't like this, how humility is making me feel. I don't like that. And then I said, this is humble humility. This is oppressive humility. And what I identified were 5 things. Number 1, it's oppressive because it allows you and even pushes you into unfair situations. It is apologetic because you're always saying, "I'm sorry." You're saying, "I'm sorry," even if it wasn't you who messed up. It's contracting because it makes you play small. And feel small. It's shaming because, you see, remember the woman that I just told you the story? She's going, "I'm sorry." That's what she's saying to the audience. But the inner dialogue that's happening is like this. "You're always going late. Why didn't you take another train? You're always messing up. Oh, I'm so sorry." Look at that. You don't even know how to put a power presentation right. "Oh, I'm so sorry." You see, so it's like we're not talking to our audience. We're talking to our audience while we respond to our perfectionist who's shaming us. And finally, it is devaluing because as we give our gifts and show our expertise and give our beautiful love, we are diminishing our credibility and we're diminishing the value of those gifts with all those "I'm sorry, I'm playing small." And that's why I got really pissed off. Do you feel what, as I describe it, you can feel how it makes you feel. And it's not nice at all. So then I was meditating on nature and I was saying, so what kind of humility I want? And I saw a peacock. And the peacock went, "Wow." And I said, that kind of humility. That's the one I want. And that's why I call it peacock humility, because it was like, number 1, it's genuinely spiritual. Why? Because it's saying to me, "Maria, you are not only enough, you're more than enough because you're an expression of the divine." That's the true spirit of humility. It's generous because it's saying, all these gifts and talents and skills and expertise that you have been given, they're gifts from God. But what you do with them in the world by sharing them, that's your gift to God, right? So that's generosity there. It's compassionate because it tells us, listen, we're all work in progress. We make mistakes. And it gives me the chance to accept myself without having to apologize. And that I'm a work in progress. So this is where I am today, but I still want to share my gifts with you. It's vulnerable because it allows me to share my vulnerability, my story, even if I'm messing up, or to share the story of how I messed up, how I made mistakes, even share at a moment in which I'm vulnerable. And in that, there is strength. It's encouraging because it allows me to stand in my competence and be confident of my value. It is empowering because it allows me to stand in my self-authority and my expertise. It is democratic because it allows me to say, hello, I have a right like everybody else to speak. I have a right to express myself and share my perception, and that's a contribution to the community. It is collaborative because it creates win-win situations. It is creative because it allows me to express who I am. And finally, it is delightful. I'm all for play. I'm all for play and joy. So it allows me to be my diva self. How does that feel? That humility feels different, right? So that's what I want for all of us. Peacock humility. And that's how it happened.
Okay, so how about I introduce our other guests and then we can jump into the conversation. So Melanie is a conscious entrepreneur, television and business consultant, perspective coach, yoga and meditation teacher, and she's specializing in helping other entrepreneurs, leaders, and small businesses transform from the inside out to increase revenue, have a bigger impact, and make effective business and life decisions that feel good. She's a clarity maven and joy bearer that believes that our most important responsibility is to achieve inner freedom and happiness, one experience at a time. Hello, Melanie.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And Shahad. Shahad is a heart-based, soul-centered, emotional processing coach, writer, and alchemist. She helps those feeling empty and disconnected connect back to their hearts again, embodying who they fully are and feeling the whole sense of vitality and aliveness. Hello, Shahad.
Hi, I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah. Shahad, how do you say your last name? Can you pronounce it?
It's alchemist. So, okay. Yeah. Thank you. It actually means beautiful. And my first name means honey. And I believe honey is the healing quality. I mean, it's used for wounds. And this is what I hope to be in the world, for the wounded hearts, basically, and soul.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Okay, so now let me introduce Bear. Bear Blissenbach. Ooh. Like you, there is a lot more to Bear's story than would fit into a few sentences. Her bio, her life experience includes living around the world, working as an attorney on multi-billion and million-dollar cases, qualifying for judicial office, receiving a PhD from the world's oldest institution in international law, and changing her entire life when she realized she was on the wrong track. Today, Bear helps people explore their passion, purpose, and power so they can create work they truly love. Her mission is to help good people make a positive difference in the world.
Thank you.
You know, Vera, I have a question for you and then for everybody.
Yes.
You know, I told the story of how I went from humble humility to kind of redefining to peacock humility. But I want to, as you were hearing this, did you remember a moment in your life where you were holding back or playing small or feeling as frustrated as I was with the humility, the humble humility? And what happened? You know, can you recognize either you changed to peacock humility like intuitively, or maybe you didn't and you can look back?
Yeah, I have a great example for you.
Okay, good.
And this is a pretty recent one. So I was recently on a telesummit, and at some point I noticed that a couple of the speakers on there were like New York Times bestselling authors. So, you know, like for a moment I had that voice like, who are you to be on this, you know, like with New York Times bestselling authors? And then I had sort of like this other voice, who are you not to, you know? And so I was reminded of this beautiful quote by Marianne Williamson about how we're not benefiting the world by playing small, and how this, who am I to do this, was actually fake humility. So I didn't use the words Hamburg humility or peacock humility. I think we can have different words for the same experience. But I was more looking at, do I have something valuable to contribute? Yes. Does it matter if I sold a couple million books less than, you know, some of the other speakers? No, for that particular instance, it doesn't. And yeah, I mean, it was beautiful to have that shift, and I felt more in my power. Like, who am I not to be on this telesummit? And it also felt like I was still discerning, because there are things that I really genuinely can't do yet. Like, I shouldn't be on a cooking show except as a bad example. I really shouldn't be. And that's fine, right? And then there are things where I generally can contribute something. And for me, this peacock humility means knowing which is which. So did that answer your question? Was that what you were referring to? Okay.
You did like an intuitive shift into the peacock humility.
Right.
Who am I not to? Hello? You went, oh! Love it. Okay. So let's see if somebody else has a story like that. Mel, I know you have lots of stories because I've heard some.
Yes. Yeah, when I was thinking of something to share, I realized I have so many stories where I made myself small. And it's kind of the history of where I come from. And I also realized that it wasn't even a matter of humility or lack of it. It was just a matter of extreme insecurity and learned family patterns as well, right? So I started acting like that in every single part, my family, my friends. And recently, for example, one example I've shared with some of my friends, I was part of a board. And when I joined that board, we were voting for who was going to be the president of the board. My whole being told me to put myself forward. But my whole other old being said, you just joined. There are other people that have been on the board for a longer time. Who are you to think that you can do this right from the beginning? And then the other side, you have all this experience. You have so much to contribute. You're great with creating teams and people. You have intuition. You feel how people and where people are coming from. But I made myself small and I shut up and I didn't do it. And it's been a disaster. So even one thing that I teach and that I bring to what I offer in business as well is that how these behaviors that we have, how these insecurities that we have can actually affect the outcomes of everything, like life, business, relationships. In this case, this board ended up having to dissolve in a very unfriendly way because the person that ended up being the president was neither qualified nor as well intentioned as one would like. And that was, how did I feel? Oh, that's a longer conversation. Through the time at the beginning, it's just that, you know, when you're not being honest and true to yourself, you can feel it in your body. There's this whole sensation of discomfort that comes through. We just tend to ignore it. So it's about learning that awareness, right? And learning to understand where it comes from. And a lot of why we become like that does not necessarily go away from the thought process, but you bring the awareness into what you're feeling, and then you can actually come out of your shell and be yourself and share yourself. And baby steps, right? You share yourself a little bit and it goes well. No, there's no this catastrophe that happens if you actually are yourself. And then you share a little more and a little more. And then at the end of the day, you end up being who you are in the world and sharing what you are here to be. So
beautiful.
For me, it's about awareness.
Okay, Shahad.
For me, it's been a very recent experience, and it's reoccurring, really. It really resonated what you just said, Melanie, of coming out of the shell, because it feels exactly like that I've been almost wrapping myself in this inner world of it's like this bubble that I felt protected me from false dangers. In a sense, I felt my biggest value, which is the connection to the divine, would be threatened if I acted like, this is who I am, this is Shahad, and I am fully here. It almost felt like, you're arrogant, you are being blinded, you are not actually feeling the divine. And when I realize that I'm doing the exact opposite by being small, I am disconnecting instead of connecting. I am actually doing the exact opposite of what this God-given gift and jewel is supposed to be. Because when I've been out there, when I allowed people to see me, I allowed them to actually be seen and be felt and actually help in their healing process, which I aim to do. It's almost as this message of the soul cannot be here if I don't embed it in this physical, actual world. And this fear is not true, because the exact humility is actually being out, not in. And that's been where this has been my really very recent experience, just a couple of weeks, allowing myself to actually talk with the public and audiences, and just having that first few steps in being here with you too, recording my videos and allowing this process.
How courageous. Oh, it feels so good. Because that is what, that's what I saw in the peacock at the moment that I saw the peacock, and maybe it was a revelation, I don't know. But it was like, here is my beauty. Witness the magnificence of the divine. It was that, exactly.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all for sharing. Maria, do you have an experience that relates to this?
Oh, yes. Okay, this was recent too. All right. I had this sales page that I was building for my membership site. And I had done, I don't know how many, like 20 or 50 times. It never worked. It was like, I knew how to do it. It's not like I didn't have the skills or the knowledge. But for some, I don't know what reason, I just kept adding more and more and more, and it never ended, and it was not good enough. It was just like, I knew that it wasn't working, that it was not a good sales page for my membership. So I finally said, I need help. And I went to Mark Silver, and I asked Mark to coach me on this. Mark Silver from the Heart of Business, who is my business mentor, my business teacher. And he said just two little things. First, he said, you're working too hard. Oh, the moment he said, you're working too hard, wham. It was like, okay, Maria, the reason why you are not doing this and keep adding is because you are in your orphan self. You are in your abandonment wound. you are not feeling good enough, so you keep putting more because nothing is enough, and nothing is going to be enough unless you take care of that little child and mother her, you know. And luckily I had done enough healing work that I can just like say, okay, it's time to heal myself, because I can not present my offers, my expertise to the world from my wounded self. That doesn't work. All right. So I took care of that. Then Mark said the second thing. He said, Maria, you know, he's very diplomatic. So he says, Maria, you need to consider that price in terms of the sustainability of your business. Wham. And I just look at it and I said, why did I put that low price? That's not going to make my business sustainable. And I knew it all the time. You see, these are not things that we think we know and we have the skills, but they interfere. Humbug humility interferes. And so I said, why? This price is like totally, it's going to devalue what I have. So I went with my business partner. We started talking. And I thought maybe double it, you know. She says, you need to triple it. We're like, what? Triple it? You know, and I got all these like scared. I got scared. And then I said, no. See, my business partner has been my apprentice for years. And what she said to me was, the value you bring cannot be less than this price. And she is speaking from experience. She's naming my value. So I let that into my heart and I said, yes. And I put it there and I did all the things that I needed to do to take care of my emotions, right? The page was done in 2 hours. I shifted from the humble humility that you're not enough and overworking and on being underpaid myself, to pick up humility. Do you like that story?
I love how it got done so quickly once you realized what was really going on. Okay, so I have another question, and that question, well, right now, we're all women on this call, and Maria, when she initially talked about it, she talked about it as an issue that women have. Now, I often think that issues have two aspects. One is sort of like, you know, more specific one, where like the culture we grow up in, or gender, or other specific things can have an impact. And at the same time, I think many of these issues also have a universal component that is sort of like part of the human experience as a whole. So what I would be interested in is, to what extent do you think this is like a gender or culture issue? And to what extent is this really like a human issue? Yeah, the human peacock sisterhood or siblinghood. Okay. And Maria, I think I'll ask you first.
You heard me. I was okay. I want to do this. Right. Okay. Humble humility. As once I got it, I started observing it, and I realized this is the servant and whip hand of every oppression in the world. Is a whip hand that allow, you know, that gets into your psyche so that you don't demand equality. So whether it's racial or it's financial or social oppression, they're going to be instilled into you, you know, so that you don't break the limits and you don't defy those boundaries that keep you oppressed. That said, it is the nemesis of women everywhere. And I'm going to put it to you like really, I'm going to put it to you like straight, and then I'm going to give you 5 facts that are from research done. What humble humility does is push women into a situation in which we work and carry humanity in our back as mothers and sisters, and endless. But we do not receive remuneration, respect, or appreciation. That's what humble humility does. And it gets into our psyche so that we don't demand it and we don't even see it. Now, it starts very early. And number one fact I'm going to give you is that it starts so early that in school, gender domination is prevalent. And for 20 years, I've been following the studies, and the studies reveal that girls who raise their hands too much are punished and shamed. That boys tend to raise their hand even if they don't know first, because that's like the testosterone kind of work there. But the teachers are not balancing this. So not only that, but 75% of attention from the teacher goes to a couple of star male students. And that's across the board in the studies. Number two, there is an unequal evaluation of competence for men and women. Men who speak up and who have initiative are evaluated 10% plus positive. They're leaders. Women who speak up and take initiative are evaluated 14% negative. Negative. All right? That's from the New York Times. Number three, women are still perceived less capable by men and women. All of us are perceiving women less capable in the 21st century. And that means that women, in order to get to the same place as men, they have to work double, and then they're still on the day, right? Number four, leadership has been defined with male values. So when women come into the leadership, they're either seen as weak because they use a feminine style, like a collaboration or communication as to weigh instead of ordering. And if they're not perceived as weak and they try to do it the male way, they're perceived as ball breakers. I'm sorry I have to say this in public, but this was from a study that was done in the military. Okay? Because now there are a lot of women in the military and they're doing a lot of studies. So, and number five is that once you see all of this picture, we have a no-win situation for women. Because either we're too weak or we're ball breakers and bossy. So we cannot win the game because the game is rigged. So we need to change the game. We need to change the game. And to change the game, we need to own our value, and we need to celebrate our gifts, and we need to open that fabulous. Does that answer the question?
I think I was more wondering about which aspects of these are part of the universal human experience.
Sorry?
I was more wondering about which part of these are part of the universal human experience, because I often see people, and not just women, do this, especially in areas that are very close to the person's heart, where it's like, oh, I couldn't do that. So I'd be interested in hearing a bit about that. Like, where does this apply beyond, like the gender or the culture?
Yeah, like I said, it is the weapon of every oppression. Because if I want to oppress you, I'm going to tell you you're less, and you cannot do these things. I'm going to tell it to you in the school. I'm going to tell it to your mother, so your mother tells it to you. And I'm going to put it in your brain. So it's everywhere. But with women across all countries, if the men in a group have a problem, let's say 10%, women have it at 100. You see what I'm saying? Because
it's not really my experience, and I know we had like some exchange about that, and that it's actually, I think, good for us to being able to disagree about that in like a very cordial way, because I think part of the Hamburg humility is also sometimes agreeing with something that you actually don't agree with. And I don't agree that it's a problem everywhere to the same extent. Like, for instance, for me, being German, I can tell it has made such a huge difference to have a female leader for such a long time, to the extent where I'm really not very concerned about it at all, and where you have like little boys asking, well, can men also become chancellor? Yeah, they can, you know.
Well, that's because you have a peacock diva.
Right. And I also think that like there's sort of like this whole cultural dimension where I can tell you a story about how I went to Canada for a year. I came back and people told me I was apologizing when they stepped on my toe. And that was sort of like the influence of the Canadian culture, which I find very beautiful.
Yes.
And I think, of course, it plays a role in terms of oppression. And I think there's a way where we're all oppressed in some ways, or especially when it comes to really unlocking our gifts. We've never lived in a society, well, we do now to some extent, where we could really, you know, shine the way we do, and not just women, everyone, and, you know, expect to not get negative backlash, maybe including having our heads chopped off. So I do think that there's something more universal to it as well. And I also agree that it you know, like it is a gender issue as well. So anyway, I just wanted to open it up to see Melanie or Shahad if you have any.
I do think that it's both. Yeah. Go ahead, Melanie.
Thank you. Yes, it's not my experience the way that you describe it, Marimar. I come from Mexico, from a European and Lebanese family, and I live in Canada. So I have a little bit of all those cultures and understand how they merge together. But even because my family was or is who they are, I was brought up in a different environment where it was actually the men that were have this humility, that they truly think it's humility, but it's actually just diminishing themselves. And I learned that from the men in my life, not from the women. The women in my life have been very strong and very opinionated. And so for me, it was that mixture, right? And then I'm my own person that have certain perception of the world, the way I've been brought up and the way I am. And for me, with the opportunities I've had in life, I agree that sometimes it seems more difficult for women. And I've had all those things happen through work, like companies I worked for and projects I wanted to come up for, or coming forward and asking for not even a raise, just can I have more opportunity to bring more of who I am into the company, because I have so much to offer and I'm stuck in this tiny little piece, right? So yes, I do think that sometimes there's a blockage, but I don't think that at this age and time and in every place, or at least the places we live in, that it's based solely on gender. I think it's a personal thing where the person that has the ability or not to give you that break is feeling insecure themselves, or has a different vision of things, or just does not agree with your personality, which is also possible, right? So for me, that is part of it. And we come with who we are. I also don't believe anyone can make you feel any possible way. It's you through your own beliefs and your story and whatever it is that you have, right? So, for example, I went through a situation at work when I used to work at a media company. I used to do international sales. And I started feeling this something going around. I couldn't pinpoint what it is, because I also feel that this humility happens to people, or this, what you call fake humility, happens to people that are extremely sensitive, because you start feeling your environment and you start feeling everybody else, and you feel stronger, even though you're not necessarily, to take on the ability to make yourself smaller so the other person doesn't feel bad. So it's part of belonging, it's part of being loved, but it's also, I know I'm sometimes very positive in that sense, but I do believe that humanity as we are, not where we are right now, but humanity as human beings, we are intrinsically loving and we are intrinsically compassionate. And intrinsically, we want everyone else to not suffer, starting with us. So to avoid that suffering that we feel inside, we'll do something to avoid the suffering in the other person. And if you're sensitive, you're feeling your discomfort and the pain of the other person. So we will do whatever it is. And it makes us become smaller many times. I'm not saying everybody goes that route, but at least in my own experience and in my life, with my brother, with my mother, with my father, with coworkers, with bosses, with friends, I just made myself as small as I could, because I felt this enormous power and joy and force coming through me. Mm-hmm. And I became afraid of it. I became afraid that if I actually let it go out, it would kind of burn my life, which was just my belief. I'm still working through it, by the way, little by little. And I've become so much more of who I am. But I realized that a lot of that was that sensitivity. And as Shahad, you were saying, it was also a sense of behind that force, there's also this super pure innocence of your essence for everybody. Mm-hmm. And there's this sense that that needs to be protected. So we put all these layers and we disguise it as humility or as not being good enough. And sometimes you do not feel that you're not good enough. You just do not say that you are good enough. You know that you are, but you just will not put it forward. So for me, it's this combination of where you come from, your own family, your beliefs, definitely the culture. Here in Canada, we do say sorry for absolutely everything and we laugh about it. But it's perceived in other cultures as a weakness, while in here it's perceived as politeness. Mm. So maybe if the word is sorry and we apologize, we are sorry because maybe I stepped on your toe. Sorry, I hurt you. I didn't mean to hurt you. I care for you. So I've come to understand that sorry or apologizing doesn't mean the same thing everywhere. How you use it, it's the difference. And if you're attached to a certain definition, that might change. It might be perceived differently. But if you're coming from your heart, the word you say comes with the intent and with strength that you have inside. So if you say sorry, it might mean, I didn't want to hurt you. It was not my intent to hurt you. If you hurt someone or whatever, like push them on the street or whatever. So yeah, I do think it's cultural. I do think that it's not gender exclusive. And I think that every country and consciousness of spaces, countries, and opportunities make a huge difference.
Do you realize that, this is interesting, that I never said that it's gender exclusive to, I say twice that it is the whip hand and the servant of all oppressions. So there's something that happens when we start saying this oppresses women. And it's that we start hearing this oppresses women only, and we're being exclusive and we're taking everybody out. And then we want to, because women are inclusive and collaborative and relationship based, then we start, like expanding to the point that we don't then realize that we need to come together to address it for gender. I mean, I'm Latina. I have a lot of other oppressions, you know what I'm saying? So yes, I apply the same thing to others, but my main oppression is a gender oppression, right? So it doesn't exclude the other ones. And I want to clarify this, very important, because I don't want those who hear the conversation to think that I'm saying that it's exclusive to women. What I'm saying is that there's research after research, after study after study, showing that it is really, really bad for the gender.
It is.
So
and I'm Middle Eastern. So I live there.
Sorry. I just wanted to jump in for a second because we're getting very near the end of our hour. And I definitely want to hear what Shahad has to say. My suggestion would be we either decide to have the third question and then we'll obviously
we're already there.
Okay, so that's fine. So yeah, then let's just continue with Shahad and then with our next question afterwards.
I just wanted to say that what I've noticed really, that I have very strong women around me, very strong. But when you really see the drive behind it, is actually to prove themselves more. Because there's so much, maybe I'm not enough, or I'm going to prove to whoever, the notion, culture, men, the idea of some concept, even an illusion of a concept sometimes, is what drives this very kind of masculine form that is not really our true essence as well. What I really find incredibly beautiful, and what I'm trying to bring in, is that the feminine power really is this most beautiful divine gift that you can give, and that it is okay, right, to bring that balance and redefine that being tender, gentle, and soft is not a weakness, it's a strength. It's this redefinition, really, that women don't need to be this whatever definition that is being out in the external world. And I do feel that this shift is slowly happening. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add on that point.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And that's part of the peacock humility. It's like you go into the arena with who you are, with your light shining, with your tenderness. I go with playfulness and magic because those are my gifts. I go with creativity. I go with laughter because if I don't laugh, I get frustrated. I just want to play with life. So I bring this, you see, and you go with your tenderness and this beautiful soul that you have. And Mel goes with this kind of sweet soul that she has. And then Bear goes with this kind of fire and luminosity. I'm just naming the beauty I see on you guys. And we go with that, and that's okay, and that's enough, and more than enough, because we're an expression of the divine.
Yes.
I think we're getting there to kind of, go through all the debris and work out what is this peacock humility that belongs to everybody, but that we women need to own it and shine it. I think that's a better way of saying. What do you think, Bear?
Yeah, I think to me it relates to power. And I think a lot of people very understandably have fear of power and fear of their own leadership. And, if we look at human history, we have all the reason to be afraid of power. And for instance, Mel, what you shared about being sensitive, it sounded a bit like that, like being afraid of spiritual power or energetic power. So I think this peacock humility can be a way of becoming more comfortable with power. And I do think that's a universal topic. So I think I'll definitely go with a both and approach. I think and I know you also said that it's both and. I think I'm thinking it's more both and than you think, which it's fine. I think it's great that we can have different perspectives and different experiences. And I think part of it may also be a generational topic. I think there is a shift that's happening, thankfully, where I feel I've never been told to kind of dumb myself down. If anything, I was sort of told, well, you put your hands up and then you figure out what you're going to say and stuff like that. So I think that's happening now. And ultimately, for me, it's so important to have a world that works for everyone, which is why I think it's important to see with these topics if they are really exclusive or universally applicable.
But I think with the power is that we are afraid of power because power has been defined by patriarchy as dominance. But then the shamans say power is energy. And the sacred feminine school says power is presence.
But if you look at some some older cultures, they had human sacrifices, and we can't say they were all patriarchal. So I'm just saying, I think that's part of the problem. And I think there are also examples of cultures that weren't patriarchal in the sense we see it now, that had stuff that we really wouldn't agree with. So I'm against human sacrifice. or animal sacrifice or anything. So.
When you hear power and you get afraid, what is it that you get afraid of? You know, is it like the shaman, all this divine energy going through you? Is it because I'm going to be a bad person, I'm going to bully others, I'm going to oppress others? Or is it, or do you realize what Shahad said, that she has her own expression of power and it comes with her presence in the world?
Yeah.
It's a different feeling.
It really is. I mean, I think there are different levels of power. You know, there's like the dominance power, and that's true. You know, like if you end up in a prison, that may be the form of power that you kind of like need to get used to, either exerting it or having it used against you. And then there are other forms of power based on tradition. And in a traditional society, a lot depends on your place in the hierarchy, where you were born, and so on and so forth. And then there are like other forms of power, like spiritual power. And they're all kind of like context dependent. And I think it's important to kind of like see that there's so many different forms and expressions of power. So yeah, I mean, thank you all for for that question, for expressing all these different points of view. So next question. Over to you, Maria.
I think that right now what I would like is for us to listen to our heart, each of us, and come up with a message for anybody who's listening to us afterwards, because now we're going to stay there in time talking about why is it important for our sisters to shift from humble humility to peacock humility in your own experience. You know, thinking of somebody you love or the message you want to leave for other women. Mel?
Thank you. For me, it's the difference between being alive and not.
Wow.
It's about engaging in life and actually feeling every passionate moment of it and allowing this joy to come through, because you're not using all your energy to resist who you are. You're just letting yourself shine. And because you are, your heart is open. So you can actually engage and relate and feel the world safely and be yourself and bring your gifts and know when to bring them, when to hold back, not because you're holding yourself back, but because you also understand the situation and the world that you're living in. It's being your own leader in that sense, knowing when to lead others and when to follow, knowing how to connect with your heart, and being in that space where you are everything you are, you actually get to know it and you have that awareness. Then you can be and do whatever you want, whenever you want, and get to know yourself a little better and a little better and a little better. And you can actually impact the world by just being there, just being a presence that is relating to yourself consistently and that is able to just shine through whenever you need to shine through. It's okay to not shine sometimes if you don't feel like it. It's not a judgment about it.
Yeah.
It's just about being who you are at every moment. And then you feel so comfortable in your own skin. And that, as we were saying before, that gives permission to others to be the same. And then they act in that way to you. So you become a mirror of the possibilities for the world. And if I go really extreme with that, I believe that when everybody becomes that, then we can change the world, because we are relating heart to heart, open heart to open heart. Because we close the heart to ourselves, not necessarily to others.
Beautiful. Okay, Shahad?
I would say that sometimes we have this experience of believing that we're too intense and that we have so much power that if this embodiment of it came through and was in light, we fear that it would be too much or it can't be handled. But in reality, when we really sense the essence that is in the spirit and the soul, we let go completely, because it's the divine expression. And we're always connected. Being disconnected, separation is just an illusion. So whatever comes through, whatever happens, is exactly what we need at that given moment. And it's never too intense and it's never too much. It is perfectly right, perfectly timed at that exact moment for you. And it is the trust of completely surrendering in that beauty and vastness that is in our hearts. That is what I'd like to remind everyone listening, really.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much. Okay, Bear.
Well, I think it may be a matter of this phrase, all hands on deck. And that it's like, are you getting on deck, you know, like, or not? Or like, are you staying down in the ship? So it's basically, well, we need like everybody's brilliance. We need everybody's talents. We need everybody's gifts. We need everybody's strengths. We need all that. And we need it now. And that requires us to not pretend we're less than what we are, or we know less than what we know, or we can do less than what we can do. So it's really about like going outside of our comfort zone and seeing what happens and how we can create positive ripples that kind of like ripple out and touch so many different people in ways that we may never even know. So that would be my answer. How about yourself, Maria?
When I look at how for many years I kept fragmenting myself, my divine jewel is magnificence. All right, and that is, you know, okay, it's a lot, you know. So I just kept saying, oh, that's too much. And my parents and my family was saying, you're too much. So I'm too much. Okay, so I started fragmenting and cutting myself, you know. So I'm gonna just let my passion a little bit here. I'm gonna get my intelligence a little bit here, and I'm gonna, you know, show that I'm creative here, but yeah, I'm gonna bring. And I wasn't happy, and for so long I wasn't happy. For so long I felt like there was always a part of me that was in a what do you call it, those things that they put to crazy people, straight jacket.
Oh.
that part of me was always in a straight jacket, you know. And now I'm accepting all of me, you know. I'm accepting my creative genius. I'm accepting my creativity. I'm accepting my expertise. I'm accepting my humor. I'm accepting my vulnerability and my mistakes. And it's like I'm coming home to myself together, inhabiting all the rooms of the home I am. And then opening all the doors and windows and say to the world, here I am. Here I am. And the more I do that, actually, the more I can see and enjoy and encourage others to do it. Because when I was holding things back, I didn't even see what the others were holding back, because I was like, so how you don't see what you're doing, right? But now I can encourage others, you know, I can inspire, and I can, by my presence, just start healing ourselves. Be part of the healing, like you say, get on board, get on that shit. and together we start becoming all that we can be, all that we were designed to be. Because I believe that the way that the divine created us is that the thing that brings delight to you and lightens you up, that's what you came here to do. You know, so you need to let the light out, because the light is guiding you. So follow the light to the light. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I see people. It's like, let the light out.
Yeah, so I think this was a super interesting discussion. Thank you everybody so much for being here and for sharing so vulnerably and openly. Thank you, Maria, for initiating this whole dialogue. And if you want to find information about anybody on here, just click on the link and you'll click on the description underneath and you'll find all that you need down there. And now all I can ask you to do, all that's left for me to do, is to ask you to join the Peacock Revolution if you like. Spread it wide and far. We all can use it, I think, and live your magnificence.
So join the Peacock Sisterhood and shine without shame.
Shine without shame. And that's it for today's discussion about women confidence. To see more of these videos, please subscribe to this channel.